Morning. Terry Baciuello, Economic Development Vice President for Economic Alliance, Snohomish County. And we are excited to have so many of you joining us today for a very interesting conversation. I wanted to introduce this topic by giving you a little background about what we're going to be talking about. Contrary to what we may intuitively think, nearly 78% of the entire population of the United States lives in the nation's suburban places. This migration and search of the American dream has continued since the industrial age, but the trend has not slowed. Through the years 2000 to 2015, suburban areas have accounted for 91% of total population growth. We are continuing to witness second ring growth in the country as people seek the advantages and opportunities that suburban places offer. Over the last decade, former bedroom communities like Bothell, Edmonds, Linwood made the leap from suburban to urban. And now, even farther north, towns and cities are experiencing similar patterns of rapid growth, putting them in transition from suburban to urban and rural to suburban. The growth in suburbs is accelerating even more in the post-pandemic world as untethered office workers continue to arrive from urban centers. Even before the pandemic, 43% of Americans telecommuted, but in the last part of last year, we have seen that number substantially increase, with an estimated 25% of urban workers not expected to return to daily attendance in urban offices. These workers are continuing to discover what others have, that living in larger cities usually comes at a higher price than living in the suburbs. According to the Land Institute, the costs of urban living are on average 28% higher than in big metro areas. Cities of this size of the suburban places often have the same problems of urban places with the budget of a suburban place. This is making it difficult to imagine how they will address the forecasted population of another 400,000 people in Snohomish County in the coming decade. Adding to the concerns of government leaders is the dwindling supply of greenfield locations within the urban growth boundary. When Washington State established the Growth Management Act and the urban growth boundaries in the early 1990s, it wanted to stop the linear sprawls of highway commercial into resource lands. However, as we fast forward 30 years into the future, development now will have to focus on densifying existing areas that have already been developed rather than green pastures. In the next 10 years, the cities will either have to accommodate the growth pressures, changing zoning and expanding densities, or it's possible the growth boundaries would have to expand. So sharing their worries and concerns in this nice coffee chat this morning, we're going to hear from three public officials from Marysville, Lake Stevens, and Mountlake Terrace. And first, Stephen Clifton, the Assistant Manager of Mountlake Terrace, City Manager of Mountlake Terrace. Stephen has extensive experience managing the growth of cities and decades of experience and formal education in community development. Stephen comes to us to Mountlake Terrace by way of Federal Way and Edmonds, where he was engaged in the development recently of a new city hall and a major transportation-oriented town center in preparation for the opening of Sound Transit's North Link in Snohomish County. If you know Stephen, you know he is an exceptional talent and enjoys the process as much as the outcome. Stephen, thanks for joining us this morning. I know you have a few slides to take us through.
There we go. Camera's working. Good morning. I'm Stephen Clifton, Assistant City Manager with Mountlake Terrace. Before I begin, I just want to note that a few of the slides in my slide deck, I'll skip through them, and then others I'll go through very briefly in the interest of time, but I have provided The presentation outlines slides to EASC, so if you ask them for a copy, I'm sure they'll forward that to you. So this morning I'll be presenting a brief overview of how a portion of the city is positioned to transition from a suburban type of environment to a more densely developed one. And for the past several years, the city has been undertaking a number of high-profile economic development-related initiatives and community improvement projects. And the purpose has been to prepare the city for what is expected to be a significant level of growth, driven in part by the arrival of light rail service beginning in 2024. And just to give you a sense here, the Mountlake light rail station abuts the west edge of the town center, and it'll have planned regularly scheduled trips to Seattle taking around 22 minutes. So this is in the interest of time. I'll just briefly show you what the station will look like when completed. Before light rail service began, the city wanted and needed to re-examine the town center originally adopted in 2007. So in 2018, the City Council appointed a task force consisting of residents, developers, planning commissioners, City Council members, and staff to discuss and recommend updates to the plan. And the council, the effort was also meant that several related plans, codes, guidelines also needed to be updated. And to facilitate development, the city also conducted an environmental review of the impacts related to the new plan up front. And for those who may not know, that is referred to as Planned Action SEPA. To give you a sense of scale, the town center area is larger than the town centers of Burien, Kenmore, Mill Creek, and other communities in the Puget Sound area. And the real test, of course, is whether people will enjoy living and working and visiting and hanging around in the town center, and whether companies will even invest their time and their financial resources. So the task force really wanted to create a town center that distinguishes itself from others. So they advocated for concentrating allowed uses as closely as possible to the light rail station. And so it was important to, one, expand the boundary of the town center core. So they added acreage to the northwest corner. That'd be the upper left-hand corner of your screen, and the property was rezoned up to 12 stories. And the building heights are minimums and maximums. So the pre-existing plan, you'll note on the left, allowed 3 up to 7 stories, and 7 stories was really only on one block of the town center. On the right side is the updated plan, and you'll note that building heights, like I said, are minimums and maximums. So the lower number represent minimum heights. So you have to build at least 4 to 6 stories, 4 stories in the perimeter, and at least 6 stories closest to the light rail station. This will ensure a minimum level of development in order to concentrate and maximize housing and jobs within a 10 to 15-minute walk shed from the light rail station. And as noted on the slide, the theoretical new residential unit capacity is anywhere from 4,000 up to 8,400 units. So the city definitely will be striving, and we believe will meet or exceed our growth targets. The approach was based on built and form block frontage designations, and this is where the focus is on the relationships between the buildings and streetscape as well as other buildings. And there's a real emphasis on the importance of pedestrian amenities. The task force and the community also wanted to maximize connectivity, and this is where we believe we're going to distinguish ourselves from other communities. We wanted to tighten up the street and right-of-way grid. So similar to other cities known for walkability, like Portland, Oregon, which has a 250 to 270 foot long block pattern, we're going to end up with around, once you remove right-of-way, of about 270 feet in length. And so we're going to try to move our town center away from the super block layout. So this will create a more walkable and pedestrian-friendly street network with slower driving speeds. There'll be an emphasis on pedestrians and bicycle access. We want strong connectivity between the transit center, the bus stops, and the neighborhoods. And we also want to maximize automobile usage. So this is reflected in part by the parking ratios, which were reduced somewhat nearest the light rail station. The core consists of 3 districts. TC1, TC2, and TC3, and there's a reserve area north and south of the core. TC1 designation emphasizes the development of office uses, but also allows residential and commercial. TC2, there's a focus on creating an activity spine or corridor, and I should note that the roadway you see depicted in, encircled in red does not exist today. That's 57th Avenue. And so we do want to create a brand new pedestrian corridor that promotes retail and restaurants and entertainment as well as arts and culture. And this zone also allows office and commercial and residential. This image here is a mapping exercise which shows that we did not want or do not want to create a canyon down 57th Avenue. So buildings that abut 57th Avenue adjacent to the sidewalk will be allowed up to 3 stories before they have to set the building back 10 feet and then up to 7 stories and then back 60 feet and eventually up to 8 stories. So we wanted to minimize the canyonization of the town center, particularly along this corridor. TC3 is primarily residential uses, and you'll note words like articulated and roofline modulation and things like that. So the city did adopt strong design guidelines that we hope will result in high quality, attractive buildings as well as streetscapes. We also conducted a 3D massing exercise to give the community, this happened during the open houses, to give them a sense of what the town center and how it might develop over time. So how do you handle all of this growth? So the city has been taking a lot of time over the last several years to prepare for the growth. And so we have focused on stormwater improvements and roadway improvements. The city constructed a stormwater detention facility below the town center to accommodate some of the stormwater from private and public development, and also roadway improvements. So phase 1 of what is called the Main Street project was completed in 2021 and is located between the light rail station and 236th Street. The full reconstruction of the roadway, so new asphalt, bicycle lanes, walkways, street trees, street lights, etc. Phase 2, and right now we're in the right-of-way acquisition phase and hope to commence construction in 2023. That's 56th Avenue between 230th Street Southwest and 236th Street Southwest. And that will also be a fully reconstructed road with parking along both sides of the street, bicycle lanes, walkways, street trees, street lights, etc. So one of the things the council wanted to do before all the private development occurred was to redevelop the Civic Campus. And so in 2017, we developed a concept, and we have ended up with a brand new 18,600 square foot city hall, and also a 3,100 square foot addition to the police station. It also includes a town center, park, and plaza, and this is to create a community gathering space in downtown. And I'll just show you a couple images of the end result. This is the southeast corner of the new city hall. And we also have the plaza with a water feature and public art scattered throughout. Ballinger Park is a 55-acre regional asset. It's only a half mile on the other side of the freeway from the town center. And the council adopted a master plan, and the Park and Rec Department have been implementing that plan and adding a new fishing pier, a new boat launch, a new universally accessible play area, some natural elements, as well as construction and realignment of Halls Creek to create a more natural and meandering waterway. And Terry asked us to talk about current trends, so I'll just close with saying that the shift in demographics is taking place. Younger people are located in Mountlake Terrace, and during the public open houses and meetings for the town center process, we asked the younger people attending those why they chose to move to Mountlake Terrace, and almost all of them mentioned to be near light rail. So as I've said many times, light rail seems to be driving a lot of what's happening. There is strong developer interest in the town center. Just in the past couple of weeks, Christy Osborne, our Community Economic Development Director, and I have spoken with developers from Bellevue, the Bay Area, Texas, and New York. A current trend that we're not real comfortable with while the town center designation TC3 emphasizes office uses, where we have been hoping to attract design and financial and life sciences and real estate types of uses, there currently seems to be a stronger interest in developing projects containing primarily residential, and that's likely a result of recent projects constructed near and within the town center that have had a lot of success leasing and renting out their buildings. There are approximately 1,100 units that have been recently built, are planned, or have been permitted. And of those that have been recently constructed, nearly all of the units have been rented within just a couple of months. So the project you see on your screen now is the one that you see along Interstate 5 as you're passing by Mountlake Terrace. And this is only building 1. When buildings 2 and 3 are completed, it'll have at least 600 residential units. So Terry, I believe I finished in 10 minutes as requested. So there you go. I can answer any questions now or after all the presenters.
We'll hold questions. We'll hold questions for the end, but just go ahead and put them in chat. Okay. So we'll monitor those. And, it's just really exciting to see the success of your project and the national attention you're getting. And congratulations on your work. You guys definitely did not rest on your laurels during the pandemic, and you did approve a lot of plans. So it's great to see that City Hall. In fact, all the 3 cities that we're talking today are either in their new city halls, or as in Gloria's case, it's coming soon. So 3 new city halls, sort of as a bellwether of the changing tides in these cities. Gloria Hirashima is the Chief City Administrator for Marysville. For 32 years, or 20% of the city's history, Gloria has come to work for the City of Marysville, first as the Community Development Director, and then since 2010 as the Chief Administrative Officer. During this time, Gloria has witnessed the city grow from 8,000 in 1980 to more than 70,000 today. That's a 9-fold population growth. Gloria brought her formal UC Davis education in environmental policy analysis and planning with her, and the impact of her work shines through in the city as she continues to work with her team to address community concerns while adapting to the changing demographies and new opportunities facing Marysville. So thank you, Gloria, for joining us, and we appreciate you making a presentation to us this morning. You're muted. Gloria, you're muted. Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for joining us and hearing all of our stories. I'm going to tell you now a little bit about Marysville. And Marysville is the city just north of Everett off of I-5. And a few factoids about Marysville. We're a community of about 72,000. We're a pretty long city and cover a lot of square miles, almost 21 square miles, second largest city in the county and 18th largest in the state. I have been here, as Terry mentioned, for quite a while, almost over 30 years now. So I've been fortunate to be able to witness the city's growth from essentially what I would call a rural community to a very solid suburban, changing to urban community. And back in the 1990s, we were about 10,000 and, facing a lot of the growth struggles that a rural community does when it starts seeing rapid residential growth. That growth continued on to today, where we're about a city of 70,000. And by 2044, our projected growth target would bring us to about 100,000. So that is a lot of change in a community. And it's been interesting to experience, and I think we've certainly learned over the years and hopefully have gotten better at dealing with, the needs of growth and population change. So what I would say is back in the 1990s and 2000s, we had steady, solely single-family growth. And we were kind of known up until very recently as the place where affordability was still present. And now, I mean, if $700,000 is affordable, then we're still affordable. But we've seen rapid change in housing prices, as have other communities. A couple areas I wanted to highlight because we are still experiencing very rapid residential development. We in Marysville still have what I term greenfields in our community. We've got areas of vacant land which obviously are easier to develop, and so we're seeing a lot of that rapid residential development occurring. A couple neighborhoods on our northwest end and then our southeast end. Lakewood Smoky Point is where we butt up actually to Arlington, up in the Smoky Point area. That area has over 1,000 residential units in development like this year, and so that's an area that is changing rapidly, from rural to suburban. And Sunnyside Whiskey Ridge, which also has over 1,200 residential units in development, and that's where we butt up to Lake Stevens. And so those are areas that are definitely adding to our residential population, and then changing the needs of the community, because as people move in from outside communities, they have different expectations. A lot of these people are coming from further south, where you have more urbanized cities and more highly developed centers and cities, and so we're responding to their changing expectations. I'm keeping this map up because I didn't include a map of the CIC, but one of the things our elected leadership has really responded to, and actually this has been in progress for the past 30 years. We were 30 years ago, and actually up until more recently, we were strictly a bedroom community, and our leadership really wanted to get more jobs, housing balance within the community, because they didn't want to continue contributing to people having to commute hours down to Seattle for their jobs. They wanted to see a community where you had jobs locally that our residents could have within the community, and then they wanted to see more balance in the types of development that we had within the city. And so they started working on what's called the Cascade Industrial Center, and setting aside land for manufacturing industrial uses. And so the area that is actually the CIC, what I'll call the CIC, Cascade Industrial Center, is an area that's combined between Arlington and Marysville, from the point where on this map it says Everett Navy Exchange, that's Smoky Point Naval Exchange, and north to Arlington, and that's our Cascade Industrial Center. And the Cascade Industrial Center is really an area that we anticipate will dramatically change the city and its makeup. We have an area between Marysville and Arlington of 4,000 plus acres of manufacturing industrial zone land, 1,700 acres that are developable are within the Marysville city limits. Arlington's area has a lot of existing industrial and already existing jobs, whereas Marysville's portion of the CIC is much more vacant land, developable land. And so this is an area that our leadership reserved and held firm to many pleas to change over the zoning and land use. And it's an area that now we anticipate that we'll see over 20,000 jobs over the next 10 years. And so that's incredible opportunity for the economy and for just local business and job opportunities. And so that's something that we believe is very important to the urbanization of our community. Some of the ways that our community has really responded to the growing demands of our community has been investing in infrastructure and transportation, particularly. When I say infrastructure, I'll include everything from transportation, water, sewer, electrical, to energy, and there are many players in those fields. But what I'll be focusing on in this coffee chat is just the transportation improvements that have been made by the city and state in order to accommodate the growing needs. And I'm focusing too on the downtown, because while we have a lot of growth occurring in the suburban kind of edges of the city, what we see as the next step and an area that we need to be prepared to both accommodate and support and facilitate is urbanization within our downtown and city center. And so the things the city has been investing in this decade include working with other elected governments like the state to facilitate major transportation improvements. And on this slide is a new interchange that is actually going to be coming under construction this year, and it will be at 529 and I-5. And this is going to be a direct entryway into the south portion of the city, and will be, a huge improvement to transportation. Well, not just to Marysville, but to communities east of Marysville, west of Marysville, and south. And so this is like an $80 million improvement that the state has budgeted in the Connecting Washington, and then also supplemental funds. And that will be beginning this year. In preparation for that, the city of Marysville made a $20 million improvement in a bypass project that's shown here to convey that traffic and transportation through our city. And we believe that some of these improvements are really important to planning ahead for downtown growth. Here is another thing that we believe is very important to our future urbanization. This is a waterfront plan for Marysville's downtown waterfront. My husband was looking at this slide and he said, "Is that Italy?" We live in Marysville. So I said, "No, it's Marysville." It's what we envision. And so we in Marysville believe it's important to cast a vision of what our future expectations are for future growth. And in the downtown, we've assembled actually over 20 acres of downtown waterfront property. And this is basically just casting a vision of the types of development we'd like to see as we urbanize the Marysville core. This is actually Marysville. This exists. And this is our opera house that we've purchased in the last 10 years. It's a historic opera house. And some of what is shown in this slide are improvements that we're currently making right now within the streetscape. And we've been doing these kinds of urban street improvements throughout the downtown with the help of state grants. And so this is one of the projects that's underway within our downtown core. And this is our new Civic Center. So this is, as Terry mentioned, a project that's currently underway, and we anticipate occupancy within a couple months. And so I think one of the things our elected leaders have felt is important is to basically cast that vision, to show what our expectation is for the future look and vision of the downtown. And so some of the investments they've made have been to showcase our city center as as a, a place to invest for future development. Between the state and city, there have been over approximately $200 million in funds set up for or already expended for these downtown infrastructure improvements. And so I think that demonstrates the public commitment to seeing our downtown urbanized. That's just another picture of the park. We're actually doing some park improvements that lead up to the Civic Center, and those are underway now too. And that concludes my speech.
Thank you, Gloria. I love the comment about your husband thinking that was Italy, because I remember him thinking Grubhub was a new restaurant. I think he must be a lot of fun. I also wanted to acknowledge that Mayor Tolbert is on the call today from neighboring Arlington, and appreciate her being there. And also that Nate Nearing, your mayor's brother and county councilman, is on the line. So we appreciate you participating today. The next speaker is the mayor of Lake Stevens, Mayor Brett Gailey. He is a longtime resident of Lake Stevens. Mayor Brett Gailey is a tireless advocate and servant to the community. The mayor completed a 21-year history in law enforcement in Everett, also serving in the military intelligence branch of the U.S. Army Reserve, where he rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel. Along with his master's degree in business administration, the mayor brings with him an infectious enthusiasm about small town quality and into his infusing the small town quality into his rapidly growing community. One of the most impressive aspects of Mayor Gailey's leadership at Lake Stevens is his ability to rally the troops and bootstrap capital projects like his recent City Hall and splash fountain project on the lake to occur. And initiatives of all kinds in Lake Stevens make this a city punching over its weight. Welcome, Mayor, and we appreciate your participation this morning. Look forward to your comments.
Hey, good morning, Terry. Good morning, everybody. I don't know, I would say tirelessly. I've got a 3-week-old, so I'm a little on the tired side, actually, although he did sleep 5 hours last night, which is a little small blessing, right? I appreciate being here. Appreciate the words, Terry. A lot of good things going on here in Lake Stevens. I would like to acknowledge my good friend Steve Corsi in the audience with the VOA. Great man, does good things, and I appreciate his service as a National Guard member as well. Good guy. So with that, let's kick it off a little bit. I'll let you guys know what's going on here in Lake Stevens, what we've done in the past and what we have going on currently, and what we are doing, what we're doing to prep for the future. Let me share. I'm a map guy. I'm an Army guy, so you're going to get a map. So can we see that? Our little colorful map. So back in 2010, the city began planning for strategic development of the city, mainly looking at sub-area plans. And then in 2018, finalized some sub-area plans for the Lake Stevens Center, which is up here in the Frontier Village area, as well as the 20th Street corridor down here, 20th Street or Old Hewitt. If you're an old guy, you know that's Old Hewitt. And also the sub-area downtown plan, which is over here on the east side of the lake. Yes, there is actually a little bit of Lake Stevens on the east side of the lake. Some people don't recognize that, but we have a great downtown area that is getting developed and looking wonderful. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Talk real quickly about the Lake Stevens Center, or the Frontier Heights, Frontier Village area of the city. And that is, as you can see, it's mostly zoned for commercial kind of a use. It's going to be very interesting, this section of town. We've gotten some new folks up there, TJ Maxx, the Ram, Bartels has jumped in there. But what's going to happen this summer, if you do not know, is there's going to be 3 roundabouts built in the middle of Frontier Village. You're going to see a roundabout at 204 and Highway 9, You're going to see a roundabout between Les Schwab and Big O Tire on Highway 9. And then you're going to see a small figure 8 roundabout just behind Walgreens. And that is going to drastically change how that area, how the Lake Stevens Center area functions and how you get in and out of our commercial, what's a large commercial area for us. So with that said, the council is right now looking and debating at what does this look like after this year, and how do we start bringing in more development into the Frontier Heights area, Frontier Village area, and specifically along 91st, where we have some tired businesses, and what incentivizes those property owners to do something different with their properties. So that's the current engagement the city council is working on with this area of the city. Just a little warning, if this is the year you wanted to backpack Europe and stay off of Highway 9, this is probably the year, because that's just one area that there's going to be a lot of construction this year with WSDOT's projects. The other project and area that I'll jump into is the 20th Street corridor area, where we are grateful to have Costco coming in. And Costco will be going in right here on this corner of Highway 9 and 20th Street. That is, they're projected to be opening end of October, first part of November. Part of that is another major roundabout on Highway 9 that's already started construction. So as Costco goes in, we're seeing additional developers perk up interest to come into this area and develop it. I actually am meeting with a group out of Ohio who have some interest in a couple of these parcels and bringing in some major retail folks into the area. We do have some constraints in this area. We've got some wetlands in this area. It's always funny, you look at a map like this, you think, oh, there's just so much area that we could build and do things. Well, the reality of it is your constraints of wetlands and different things always shrinks those parcels up and makes it a little more difficult. The other big constraint we have along this corridor is the Everett water line that runs just about 100, 200 feet to the south along 20th Street. So that becomes a constraint for us as far as developing these areas. But having said that, we've got some folks interested, and we've got good things going on in this corridor to provide some retail commercial for our folks. And let's jump over to the downtown sub area, which is over on it'd be kind of the old area of Lake Stevens. That's been a really good success story for us. We did some revitalization of our North Cove Park last couple of years, made it so that it's actually a functional, usable park to include large green space, movement of our war memorial, addition of an ADA compliant park, and taking out the old community center and building a new community center, which we call the Mill, and then bringing in a farmers market during the summer. And the farmers market's been highly successful. Market revenue for 2021 was about $500,000 for that market, which initially, when we were looking at a farmer's market, I was concerned that it would take away from our brick and mortar folks that are downtown. But in reality, Subway ran out of food every farmer's market, and Jay's was always hit up, and Francisco's was full of people eating some dinner after the farmer's market. And we've coupled that as well with some live music after the farmer's market, and a beer garden, and a food truck, and you end up having a great atmosphere of about 100 people staying after the farmers market and networking and getting to know their neighbors. It's just a great event. The Mill has been very successful for us. Last year we had 50 scheduled events. This year we already have 27 scheduled events, and it's just growing for us. So downtown, the efforts of the council over the last decade to reimagine what downtown looks like is starting to pay off for us, and we're getting more and more activity down there. We are finishing what we're calling the Mill Spur, which is a street that is adjacent to the mill, a flat street where we see the farmers market going into, a boat show. We're talking to the World Axe Throwing Association to do an axe throwing competition down there. So just doing all these sorts of events to bring folks downtown Lake Stevens and spend their money. Finally, we do have a great little commercial project that's going on up in Soper Hill, right across from Marysville up here. And that's this red area here. Developers going in there, and they're currently building 52,000 square feet of commercial and professional services space. And that's an exciting project for us to see finally going and getting up off the ground. So those are some of the sub areas. Some of the things that we're doing as far as planning ahead and things that we've done with some of our ARPA money is we hired a company called Urban 3. I think some of you may have heard of Urban 3. They're also working with the Affordable Housing Alliance. And we've looked at what does value per acre mean for us, and what do we have to do to increase our value per acre when we do bring in new development and do new retail. Yeah, I think it was Stephen was talking about housing and what do we bring in, and right now it's a really difficult time for developers to do anything other than housing, because it's just such a difficult market for office space and commercial space versus housing space. And we drastically need housing, but we also need places for our folks to be able to enjoy a dinner or get their services that they need. So Urban 3 has been able to show the city council. It's a 3D, if you haven't seen it, it's a 3D color version of what your city looks like on a value per acre basis. And so our new mantra within the council is creating purple spikes where we can. And if you look at their presentation, you'll understand what that means. The other thing that we've done with some of our ARPA money is we've reached out. We don't have an economic development person within the city. So what we've done is we've hired out to a company called Retail Strategies. And they've come in and produced a new demographic overview for us. They've updated our community profile and market guide for the city, and they are representing us at different conferences, to include the International Conference of Shopping Centers, in an effort to bring in new retail folks and new brokers and developers to find interest in Lake Stevens and bring their businesses into the city. And Terry, I think that's all I have for this group, other than answering some great questions that are already out there on the chats.
All right. Well, I'll start with the first question to you, and I've been making notes of the questions in the comments. I really appreciate that. I have to ask you, having worked for Troy McClellan, who's a Rear Admiral in the Navy Reserves, he always said that no plan survives the first attack. And I'm just wondering, what's been a surprise to you as you've tried to implement your vision as a military leader? Have you had any of those kinds of changes to your plan?
Yeah, no. On the Army side, that's probably a Navy thing. On the Army side, we say no plan survives LD, or line of departure, right? From that line that you take off from. And that's absolutely true. I hate to refer to COVID, but COVID's obviously a factor. And jumping in as mayor, prior to COVID, it was Costco's and sidewalks galore, right? And then COVID punches you in the face, and that was that LD for me anyway. And so for myself, I had to adapt, change plans, and focus on just getting the community and through that pandemic era. And then, from a military standpoint, and I'm actually still in the reserves. I was at drill over the weekend. And from the military standpoint, it's, we're very linear oftentimes within the military. And from a government standpoint, I have to sometimes realize that there's so many other factors in my planning process that I've got to make sure I incorporate everybody in and look for opportunities to to bring other ideas into a planning process and have to bring other ideas into a planning process. So hope that answers your question, Terry.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to acknowledge Melody Daisy from Sky Valley Chamber and Brent Kirk from Granite Falls are on the call, also in cities facing a lot of growth pressures. Gloria, there's a question here for you. I know Marysville is a tree city USA, which requires a lot of things to replace tree canopy and that kind of thing. But one of the listeners, Beth Fleming, asked about considerations made to evaluate related environmental conditions, specifically as it referred to tree canopies, ecosystem impacts, and impervious surfaces. What do you have to say to Beth?
Yeah, actually, because my background's a planner, and actually I have an environmental science degree and major, so the environment is very important, and I believe it's essential to any successful community is making environment a priority of the community's growth. And so a few things I wanted to say about that is one, having been here when they implemented GMA, I think growth management has been an incredible and valuable tool in guiding city growth, because with it came a lot of growth controls and regulations that we didn't have prior to GMA. Critical area ordinances, regulations that protect wetlands, streams, and then, we've seen a lot of improvements to stormwater regulations. And so I think having a really good regulatory controls is essential for community growth. And then a couple of things that I also wanted to mention with respect to Marysville is we've been both either the proponent or a beneficiary in some really key infrastructure improvements that support the environment. One of those I wanted to mention was a project of the Tulalip tribe. So we were a beneficiary. We were also a partner on that, but the tribes were definitely the driver. And that was the Quileute Estuary project, which is actually just adjacent to our downtown. And this was a 350 plus agricultural area that was reverted back to its natural estuarine condition. And it's called the Quileute Estuary. And so that was a huge, improvement to our local environment. And more recently, just this year, the city was a proponent, and I'm just giving some examples of environmental investment in a $5 million stormwater improvement. And we did get a grant from the state, so I should need to recognize them as well. But stormwater improvement to our downtown again, that is actually going to be treating stormwater that comes out of the downtown. And this has basically not been treated for, for the entire city's history. And the city's actually constructing right now a stormwater treatment facility that will treat the downtown water and collects from a very large basin of the historic downtown. And so those are the kinds of things that I think a city needs to consider as it grows, is what things can you do to remediate, current environmental, pollutants and issues, and what kinds of investments can you make in addition to addressing regulatory controls.
Thank you, Gloria. Kind of reminds me of the city of Bothell actually unearthed the stormwater line under the city that was actually initially a fish-bearing creek, and restored that, a Horse Creek project, a $6 million project. I know that there's a similar project up in Arlington or Marysville also. So there's a lot of good happening as well. I do want to throw a question over to Stefan and also recognize Aaron Murphy, City Council member in Mountlake Terrace, as well as City Manager Scott Hugel. Mountlake Terrace has significantly increased density and receiving a lot of national and developer interest in your project. How has the current population reacted to the coming growth? And Matt Smith, my predecessor at EAC, wants to know what kind of public involvement have you had and what were their reactions? And also Matt Tabor from Lake Stevens Chamber is asking about how are you encouraging current property owners in your new core area to rebuild for the future of the city? And he mentions Diamond Knot Brew Pub. You're muted.
My apologies. There's a few questions in there, but I'll start out with the first one, and that was community receptiveness to the overall planning process. One of the things that was very important for the city council is when they appointed the task force, they wanted it to reflect the community and not just the residents, but planning commissioners, city council members, developers, and citizens. And so the city was very methodical in how we laid out the process, and it did include community involvement. And although there were a few people who, were not real comfortable with some of the planned changes, I would say that overall, at least those who attended the meetings, there seemed to be pretty broad support and acceptance of the changes, particularly in a significantly underdeveloped area where we lost a lot of amenities over the years within the town center. This will be an opportunity then to create a town center and a core and the heart of the community for everybody. The second question, Gloria, was which one? I think it was working with the developers, is that right? And how the property is put together, if I recall correctly.
Yes, I think you meant me, but it was asking, or how are you engaging the existing property owners to kind of morph into the new, reinvest in their current development?
Yeah, during the process, there were some concerns raised by property owners that the city would attempt to condemn their property in an effort to develop the town center, and we had to reassure everyone that that was not the city's intent, that all the privately owned property would be developed privately. And so what's happening is that developers are assembling properties as we speak and actually buying entire blocks of land. Some have actually bought as much as 2 blocks of land throughout the town center, and that's how properties are being assembled and developed. Now, when the developer comes into the city, we do stress and underscore the importance of design guidelines. We underscore what the comprehensive plan says about the types of uses that are encouraged or requested in certain districts. For example, TC1, we do ask for office uses to encourage them to build office uses, but they may not want to, but we have to ask. And then we also ask that every building on every block look different from the other buildings. That's something that we request in all of our meetings. We don't want the same building going on 3 different blocks. That's not what we want to do as the town center is developed. We want it to look visually interesting. We want the buildings to relate to the street. And so that's kind of what's happening right now, but really the properties are being assembled privately. And then we're meeting with developers as they come in with proposals and talking with them about each one of those.
There are a couple of questions about housing, and I am probably going to just push those off into the housing coffee chat that we're having next month. One person asked about condominium development. We know that developers are really sheepish about developing in Washington State because of condominium law. There has been some changes to the law, but those laws have not yet been tested. So there's condominiums, I think, are a great answer for the future. We're seeing a lot more townhomes as a result of that. And then also policies for affordable and workforce housing. So we'll look forward to that deeper conversation on that. But I did want to address this one question about the ways in which city plans are adapting to be more pedestrian friendly, to help some segments of the community that are more isolated, like elderly or people with handicaps, to have more accessibility. And then what are the things that you're doing to address climate change? Because as Brock Howell points out, as your city is just beginning to really urbanize, there's some tremendous opportunities for you in those spaces. So why don't we start with Gloria and then have each of you answer this one? And I think that would be our wrap up.
Okay, what was the first part of the question again?
It's basically asking about what are the new types of things that cities are doing now that you're implementing into your plans, like creating less isolated neighborhoods by walkability, and also climate-friendly policies?
Okay, well, I can, I'll address the older adults and people with disabilities. I see the question. One of the things that we've introduced into our plan, and actually is we have a pretty significant development that we're working with right now, is the allowance for master plan senior communities. And so that was a provision of the code that we created a while back, but it's never been used or tested. And we're actually working with development right now to create, our first master plan senior community. Also being open to different types of development. We have a cottage community that's currently under planning as well. So allowing for different, types of neighborhoods that are more attractive to, older adults or communities. And then we're also looking at sidewalk improvements and change out of our, any deficient ramps, etc. So one of the things. Oh, sorry. Okay.
I was just saying, yeah, you showed us a picture of the barriers that you're removing from around the Opera House.
Yeah, and we're using some of our pandemic money to do sidewalk infill as well.
How about you, Mayor?
Yeah, so great question on the walkability. That's something that I've really become concerned about over the last 2 years. The city has such a different growth pattern as far as old city and old county areas and new areas of development. And so walkability is just really a mixture within the city. So something I'm working on this summer prior to our next budget next budget cycle in the fall is to put together a public safety package of more ADA compliant walkways, being able to see where we need to connect those sidewalks and walking paths so that we can do more walkability within the city. Especially that Soper Hill project has a UNESCO version of it that's a 5-story assisted living project in there. So we need to make sure that they have walkability down to our senior center, which is actually just down the street. And then another big project that will kick off this year is a power line trail that will run north-south throughout the city, west of Highway 9. And that will actually, we actually have an ILA with Gloria and the great city of Marysville to connect up with their power line trail. And that would eventually allow people to get all the way out to Centennial Trail. So we're thinking about it. We're always constrained by those funds, that silly word called money. But we're working through it and seeing how we can make it happen.
All right, and Stefan, what about you?
Yes, our public works department, our planning department, and of course, city administration and council members are all highly sensitive to accessibility. And so if you look at our Civic Campus, if you look at the grades of the walkways and even the walkways themselves connecting our library to our city hall, the ramps are actually at the drive aisles. And so the walkway is the same elevation across the driving lanes as it is the sidewalks. And so we try to minimize ramps by keeping everyone at the same elevation. Of course, ADA accessibility at all the intersections as the town center redeveloped. You look at the standards that were adopted. The sidewalks will all have to be widened within the town center, the block shortened, which creates some more walkability. We even look at the letters of the signage to make sure that they are highly readable within a certain, distance of the sign. We, at all of our, signalized intersections, of course, you have to do all of the ADA requirements to make sure that, there's audio and we have tactile domes and that we've inserted into our sidewalks around Civic Campus. So those who don't have really good vision, they can, they come across those tactile domes, they feel them, they can tell there's something coming up. So we are making a concerted effort to make the city as accessible as possible.
Sounds great. Well, you guys are all doing a wonderful job, and we appreciate you taking time to share this with us. I also wanted to acknowledge Rich White, who's the chair of our Board of Trustees, and thank Annette and Katie for putting this together today. We also have a number of other EASC staff online. If you have questions or concerns, please call us. We're here to help you grow the economy and improve opportunities for jobs in the community. In the coming month, I did put a link in the chat. We have several more coffee chats. Those are free events weekly. We've got one on clean tech that will feature some companies that are very innovative in Snohomish County, leading the way in several areas and industries, and then also the state of Everett on March 31st, which will be in person. So if you really want to see if we are actually still dimensional objects, please come to that event. And we, again, thank you for your participation this morning and look forward to seeing you all again. Have a great day from ESC and our 3 cities featured today.